Last year in March, a pandemic took over the world. We didn't realise at the time. We didn't realise how long we'd be closed. We didn't know the extent. We didn't even know if we were going to open again. But what we did was we sat down as a group of guys and girls and said, what can we do to help out? The first thing that came to mind, and it was an idea broached by other sheds, was can we make face visors? We couldn't compete with the big boys, but they weren't competing at all. People were coming to us and asking, can you help us out with PPE? And we said, at this time no, but we'll look into it. An email was sent around the Sheds Associations with a design for a face visor emanating from Canada of all places. A simple design that we could make out of sticky back plastic, some elastic, that sort of thing. We didn't know how dangerous the pandemic would be, how brutal this disease would end up being. However, we took a chance and a group of us met in the shed quite regularly under as safe conditions as we could make. And we put together this design of face visors, not knowing how useful they'd be or practical they'd be. 5,500 we made, produced and distributed. Now don't get me wrong, we didn't make all of these visors. We had to buy some in because the demand was so high. We were surprised the areas that were asking for visors, institutions that should have provided their workers, their key workers with visors, simply weren't. We sought out funding, and that was an issue in itself, but I'll not go into that in much detail. But suffice to say, we got sufficient funding and support from the community, which allowed us to produce visors on a fairly major scale for this part of the world. We weren't the only shed that did this. Selkirk Shed took on board this design. They had a laser printed version and their own made version. Coldstream did the same. Other sheds just simply couldn't. The age demographic didn't lend itself to people meeting in close proximity during a pandemic. And we spent about 3 months fairly intensively making and distributing visors, and not just in the Borders region, all over the place, as far as Inverness and down to South Tyneside. So we covered a fairly major area. So on the 12th of March 2020, we, along with other sheds, made the decision to close the doors. We didn't know how long it was for, and we didn't know if we'd ever open again, but there was always hope. So, by the miracles of modern science, magic, whatever you like, here we are, the COVID response from Gala Men's Shed. We invested in safety gear, safety equipment, cutting gear we didn't have. Our biggest problem was materials. Material costs went up exponentially. For example, we ordered elastic on a Friday at 32 quid for, I think, 100 metres. By the Sunday, when we reordered, it was up to 64 quid for the same amount. Clearly there was a racket going on, but you expect that. We've been told about that, but by God, it nearly put us off our stride. So we went to the community. What did we ask the community for? We didn't ask them for money. We'd already got sufficient funding. It was the raw material that was the issue. Perspex we couldn't get. We used acetates, tiny things like buttons to hold the elastic to the acetate, double-sided sticky tape. Eventually we got there, but it was the community that supported us, that came to us when we reached out to them, and they came to us with bags of elastic. bags of acetates, equipment we just couldn't get. So let me take you inside the shed and let me show you a wee bit about what we did. And the very first ones we made, aluminium sheets, some foam, 1.5 by 1, double-sided sticky tape, held together by elastic in a knot. That's all we had in the shed. We made hundreds of those. Absolutely hundreds of them. When we started to get a bit more wise to what we needed and how many we needed, the visor you see sort of hanging up there, book coverings, plastic book coverings cut up into strips, and we were donated a foam mattress. Now that must have been £100 in its own, massive big foam mattress which we cut up into strips using an electric kitchen carving knife. You know, the one you chop up a turkey with at Christmas. So yes, very basic equipment. We were given gloves, we flagged 3 of these laminators from Tesco's, and the plastic you see in the visor is laminate, bonded together through a laminator, hundreds of those. We burnt out 2 laminators, we burnt out 1 electric carving knife, but we still had enough to keep us going. So that's our Gala shed. Beautiful sunny day, what a difference it makes. And 50 yards away, up the hill, is what it was all about, and it's still ongoing. Walk-in COVID test centre. So there we are. That's just a brief glimpse of the Gala men's shed. It's a community shed in Langley and Galashiels. It's been here for 6 years, nearly 7 years now, one of the older sheds in terms of memberships. We do our best to keep it going. We struggle with a very short lease from the council, albeit £1 a year, you can't complain. We think we've done the right thing over the last year in terms of opening the shed and letting some members in to do a bit of work that's helped the community. The community have bought into this. They've supported us, they've supported the men and women that come to the shed, and we think we've done the right thing. I hope you've enjoyed a wee view of Galashiels shed. It is what it is, it's a shed, it's our shed. Thank you.